with P2JB, the new kernel exploit that allows us to use the YouTube application to jailbreak up to firmware 12.40 on the PS5 just by loading the YouTube app. Now, there's been a number of updates to this to improve stability, and we now have Autoloader versions available to autoload the jailbreak and the payloads that we want to run after we're jailbroken, so we can basically do everything with just one click by loading the YouTube application and waiting for the jailbreak to complete. That is the idea. Now, in my last news update video, I got quite a few people asking about how to update from a previous version without having to reset your console by restoring a backup. So I'll also show you how to update from an older version to any new version of the YouTube jailbreak that you want to try. So that is what we're going to be covering here. In this case, I'm going to update from an older version to this Autoloader version. So first of all, if you're doing this on a fresh retail console that has not had a previous version of the YouTube jailbreak installed before, you will have to reset your console by restoring a backup file. You can just download the backup here. You've got this backup file that you can download. So download the backup file, and then you need to extract the PS5 folder from that backup zip file to the root of an exFAT formatted USB drive. Just extract the PS5 folder into the root of the drive. Do not put it in any existing folders. And then you can plug that USB drive into your PS5. You go into the System Settings, System Software Backup, and Restore options, and you select the option to restore your PS5. Now, this does reset your console, so you lose everything that's installed on your console currently, so it's always a good idea to make your own backup first before restoring this one, because this one will completely reset your console and you'll lose all of your data that's on the console currently. But that is what you need to do to get the YouTube application installed on a fresh console. However, if you've already restored a previous backup and you want to now update to the new Autoloader version or to some other version of the YouTube jailbreak, well, in that case, all you need to do here is go ahead and download the download 0 zip file instead of the backup. So we just go ahead and download this. Then we also want to download the FTP server payload. So just download the PS5 version of the FTP server payload. We also need to get connected up to our network on the console by heading into our network settings, set up an internet connection, pressing options on your registered network and going to advanced settings and making sure the DNS settings are on manual and the primary DNS is 127.0.0.1 or 127.0.0.2. So now you just need to run the jailbreak with your current version of the YouTube jailbreak, get that version loaded. So I'm using the one that auto patches the Blu-ray exploit. So just go ahead and run your current version of the YouTube jailbreak. If you have to send the payload manually right now, then send the payload with netcat GUI, send over the p2jb.js file to get the console jailbroken. So once the console has been jailbroken, you can head back out to the home screen and the ELF loader should be running in the background. So now we just open up netcat GUI, which I'll leave in the description, drag in the FTP server payload you downloaded into the program, enter 9021 as the port number and the PS5's IP address in the host box, and then click inject payload. And then you'll see it starts running the FTP server payload on our console. So we now have FTP running. So now that we have the FTP server running on the console, we can open up an FTP client like FileZilla on our computer, enter the PS5's IP address in the host box, port number should be 2121, and then we can connect to the PS5 remotely to access the file system, and then we can go down to the user folder, and then the download folder, and then PPSA 01650. Now we just open up the zip file that we downloaded that contains the download zito for the Autoloader version. We can extract that out to our computer, over to our desktop here. So now we just need to copy this download 0 file into the same location as the original one with FTP and overwrite the original, and that will start transferring the file. If you're on a wireless connection, it will go a lot slower. It may take a while for that to transfer over. But once it's transferred over, you now have the new version installed without having to restore a backup file. Okay, so if you want to set up the autoloader so you don't have to send the payloads manually, we can also download the backup file. Even if you updated using the download 0 file without restoring a backup, we want to download the backup file zip file anyway because it contains the Autoloader folder. So you can download that. And then any payloads that you want to run once you're jailbroken. So I'm going to download, of course, KStuff Lite, which is our main kind of jailbreak payload to allow us to run our homebrew applications and PS4 fake packages and PlayStation 5 game backups. So we can go ahead and download KStuff, and then also Shadow Mount Plus to be able to mount our PlayStation 5 game backups. So we can download that. Also FTP if you don't already have the FTP server downloaded. And I'm also going to download the payload manager as well. So those are the ones. I'll leave them all linked down in the video description. So now we just need to grab our USB drive and then open up the backup file zip file. In here we have the PS5 Autoloader folder that we can extract here onto the root of our USB. And then we can go into this folder and you can see by default it runs the Blu-ray and patching payload. So I'm just going to get rid of that and change it to the payloads that I want to run. Now generally the way I would set this up is just put the payload manager in here and edit the autoload.txt file. And all we want to do is change the payload name to the payload manager so that it only autoloads the payload manager, and then we can use the payload manager to install all of our other payloads. So that is how I would set this up, and then we can just grab all of the other payloads, the K stuff, the FTP, and drag those just into the root of the USB drive, as well as Shadow Mount Plus. We can just extract the Shadow Mount Plus L file also to the root of the USB drive. And that should be the setup there. The payload manager should work up to 12.40, but if you are having any issues on higher firmwares up to 12.40 with this payload not working, then you can instead just have it auto-load these payloads. Instead, you just go ahead and cut and paste them into the same folder as your autoloader, and then edit the autoloads.txt file again, add those payloads in so it will auto-load those payloads instead of the payload manager. That's another way that you can set this up if you're having any problems using the payload manager on higher firmwares, but I believe it should work up to 12.40 so far. And just to test to make sure that the jailbreak is fully working, I'm going to also copy a PS4 fake package into the root of the USB drive to see if we can get that running once we're jailbroken. And also in this homebrew folder, I've copied a PlayStation 5 game backup Returnal into this location, so we can also see if we can get our PlayStation 5 game backups running as well with this jailbreak. So once we have the USB drive configured, we can eject the USB drive and plug it in to our PS5. Okay, so I've rebooted my console, so this is the first test here, loading the new Autoloader version. So we're going to run the YouTube application, and we shouldn't have to send any payloads because everything should be automated. So there we go, it's been updated to version 1.5, and it's now loading the P2JB port. So the update has definitely been successful. It's been updated to version 1.5 of YouTube Jailbreak, and it's using the Autoloader to autoload the kernel exploit, but now we have to wait around 50 minutes with this jailbreak in order for it to get to the next stage. So all we got to do is come back in 50 minutes and it should start running the kernel exploit, and hopefully it's successful on the first run. So this is what happens on a successful run. We get the jailbreak loaded after 50 minutes. It goes through, runs everything, and then we get the ELF loader loaded, and then it also closes the YouTube application once it's done, and then it runs our payloads that we have in the Autoloader folder on our USB drive, which in this case, I'm using the payload manager, so it just loads the payload manager. But if you, of course, set it up to just autoload your main payloads, then it will just go through and run your FTP, K-Stuff, and Shadow Mount payloads. The good thing about the payload manager, though, is that you can more easily add and remove payloads via the USB drive or online by downloading them, so it makes things a little bit easier. So I'm just going to configure this the way I normally set this up by going into the settings, unchecking the box for auto open browser when running the jailbreak, and then scan USB payloads so we can access the payloads on the USB. We'll do 3-second delay for the autoloader. We'll go to manage payloads, and we'll move K-Stuff from the USB to the internal storage. You get that installed. And then we'll also add the FTP server, move that to internal storage. And then finally, I'll also grab Shadow Mount Plus and move that to the internal storage as well. So now I can load these payloads and add them to the autoloader, so I can enable the autoloader. And then I'll add FTP, Shadow Mount, and K-Stuff. So whenever I run the jailbreak again, the payload manager will automatically load these payloads for me. And what I'll do for now is I'll just go ahead and load a few payloads. I'll load the FTP server payload and get that up and running. We'll load Shadow Mount Plus. And there it goes. It's found one game on the USB drive, which is Returnal, which should be installing that. And then I'll also go ahead and run K-Stuff Lite, version 1.6, so we can run our game backups. So that should be us all set up here. I have Returnal installed. I know the icon's not showing. This is a bug from a previous version, I think. But you can see when I launch it here that it is actually loading. So that's Returnal loading off my USB drive. So we've got our PS5 games running. No problem. As you can see, we have the game loaded. So we'll go ahead and close out of that. And then for our PS4 fake packages, we can go to the settings, debug settings, game, and then package installer, and install our Minecraft package file, and get that installed. That's how we get our PlayStation 4 applications installed, and we can go ahead and run that. And as you can see, that's working too. So yeah, we've got the jailbreak fully set up, and it's now essentially one click. All you have to do is load the YouTube application. You do have to wait a long time with P2JB, but you just run the YouTube application and wait, and it will load all of your payloads. Now it is loading them off the USB drive. So another thing you can do now that we have the FTP server payload running, you can of course connect back up to your console through FTP and simply go into the data folder on the PS5 and then open up your USB drive that we loaded the Autoloader from, and take the PS5 Autoloader folder and just upload it into this location, into the data folder. So now you don't need the USB drive plugged in to autoload the payload manager. It will just be autoloaded for you. So that is how you get the Autoloader set up, and that's just this version of the Autoloader. I suspect we'll have its PLK Autoloader that'll probably get released, which will be even easier to update. But generally, this is how you can get this Autoloader set up. Plus, you now know how to update the YouTube jailbreak to any new version that you want to switch to. Any different Autoloader version or any new version that's got improved stability or some other improvements, you can now update to it without restoring a backup file, if you have a previous version like this where you can just copy over the download 0.dat file. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video or found the information useful. If you did, please give a like and subscribe.